Well, everybody is familiar with the music of Tommy Roe, with a string of hits like Sheila, Dizzy, Sweet Pea, Jam Up and Jelly Tight. The list goes on
Everybody.
and on. Everybody? You've heard those? Okay. But we're going to talk about a specific time in a stellar career. It was 1963 when Tommy went over and did a tour of Great Britain with fellow American Chris Montez and unknown opening act, the Beatles. We're not sure whatever happened to those guys, but we're here with Tommy today. We're going to talk about that magic time. So you go over to Great Britain. Now, if I'm not mistaken, when you went over to the UK, you already had a #1 hit with Sheila at that time,
I did,
correct?
yes, I did.
Okay, so you go over, you're the big deal. You got these young upstarts nobody's ever heard of, the Beatles as your opening act.
Right.
Was it obvious to you that something was going on there with these guys?
After about the third show.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
It became real obvious.
Okay, was there pandemonium?
As absolute chaos. Yeah.
Okay.
And the whole thing reminded me of the first time I saw Elvis Presley when I was still in high school in Atlanta, Georgia.
Okay.
I had a third row seat.
Oh, no.
At the Paramount Theater in Atlanta. And I go and I think, this is great. I'm going to see Elvis sing Heartbreak Hotel. It's going to be fabulous. He walks on stage. First, Scotty and the band plays a few tunes. It's, polite applause. He walks on the stage. I never heard him sing. I never saw him. The people just mobbed the stage, started screaming and yelling. And when I did the show with the Beatles, it was the same thing. So it was like deja vu.
Well, but you had your own version of Beatlemania. I mean, you were a good-looking kid. You're a teen idol. You got hit records. They were screaming girls for Tommy Roe, too.
Chris and I had our fans. Absolutely, we had our fans there. And, Chris had the #2 record in England at the time, Let's Dance.
Okay.
So we both had huge hits. I mean, that's why we were doing the tour. We had the hits. And the Beatles, of course, released their album during our tour, and the first song became a huge smash, Please Please Me, and Love Me Do.
Yeah.
And it started playing during the tour, so the tour was chaotic all the way. If you remember Hard Day's Night, the movie, that's exactly how our tour was. I think they got the idea for the whole movie from our tour.
Oh, man,
yeah.
That's good. Well, now, but your hit Sheila, I understand that the Beatles were covering that in their set prior to your arrival. Did you get to hear them play that at all?
Well, it's a funny story. When we first started the tour, John comes over to me and said, we've been doing your song in our show. We did it over in Hamburg at the Star Club. And he said, but I don't think we're playing it correct. He said, here's, he got his guitar, his Gibson guitar, and he says, here's how we're doing it. And he plays a few bars, and sure enough, he was playing the chords backwards.
Oh, okay.
And I said, yeah, you've just got the chords backwards. He was playing A, D, E, and then the song goes A, E, D. And I said, it's just A, E, D instead of A, D, E. And he says, yeah, I knew it sounded kind of weird, but, we love the song. We've been doing it in our show, so... There's actually a crude recording of that from the Star Club out.
Of the Beatles.
Kind of a bootleg record out there. Somebody in the Star Club had a tape machine going and they recorded them doing it live, and it's kind of interesting sounding.
Well, how cool is it that you gave John Lennon a guitar lesson? Here's how you play my song, buddy.
It's funny, that Gibson guitar just sold in auction for over $1 million.
No, oh, man.
And during that tour is when I wrote Everybody, and John used to let me borrow his guitar on the bus, and I wrote Everybody on his Gibson guitar. So now the guitar's worth $2 million.
Oh, man, that's crazy. well, everybody knows the Beatles went on to change the shape and sound of America, fashion, culture, everything. And there were a lot of singers who kind of credited the Beatles for their demise because they were no longer relevant. But you, on the other hand, you went on to have some of the greatest success of your career. And in 1969, you hit #1 again with Dizzy.
Yes.
Why is it that you were able to survive without really, you didn't become an acid freak or anything?
It was a conscious struggle. I mean, I was in the Army in 1964, so I was kind of out of the loop for the whole year. And while I was in the service, I already had Sheila was a hit, and Everybody was a big hit. And I had a few in-between records. Carol, I re-recorded Chuck Berry's Carol. It was a big chart record. So while I was in the service, the Beatle invasion started in '64. And the whole time I was there, all I heard on the radio in Fort Jackson, South Carolina was Beatle music. And I'm thinking to myself, when I get out of here, what am I going to do, man? I mean, all they're doing is playing, and then these other British acts are coming behind them,
Right.
So it's like an influx of all these British acts. So I consciously set out to try to come up with an idea, and I wrote Sweet Pea while I was in the service in Fort Sam Houston, Texas. I went from Jackson to Sam Houston, Texas. And while I was in the service, I wrote that song, and my whole idea was to do something that was totally different than what was being played on the radio.
Okay.
And I called it soft rock.
Won't you be my girl? Won't you
the service, I recorded Sweet Pea and released it, and it was a huge hit for me. So that started out my new sound, which eventually became known as bubblegum music, and they called me the king of bubblegum. You know, I started doing Sweet Pea, Hooray for Hazel, and I had all those bubblegum records through there.
Right.
And then, of course, Dizzy was my big, you know, the biggest one of them all. So I started a whole new sound, and I think being able to write my own music and, you know, kind of control what I released helped me survive the 60s with the Beatles and the British invasion.
So another one of your hits, Jam Up and Jelly Tight, should be on a top 10 list of things that sound dirty but aren't. What exactly is the meaning of Jam Up and Jelly Tight?
Yeah, I think it depends on your gender preference, how you take that. But the whole idea of the song was so simple. I mean, I was naively thinking of my father. He used to use that expression when I was a kid, like we would say out of sight or groovy.
Oh, okay.
He would see a young lady walking down the street. He'd say, "Son, that young lady's jam up and jelly tight." And so, I mean, there's nothing nasty about that at all. But
unless
you know,
you want it to be.
Yeah, unless you want it to be. So the hidden meaning is there, I suppose, if you want it to be.
That's great. Well, now a documentary came out a couple of years ago about the group of musicians known as the Wrecking Crew, the studio musicians who were responsible for virtually every top 40 hit in the '60s. And you worked with those guys.
I did.
Hal Blaine, notably.
Joe Osborne.
Yeah. What was that experience like? I mean, these guys were technicians.
Oh, they were the best in Hollywood. You know.
Okay.
They were the A-team. And of course, before I moved to California, I worked with the A-team in Nashville. You know, David Briggs on keyboards, Jerry Kerrigan on drums, Norbert Putnam on bass, and Jerry Reed on guitar, and Wayne Moss on guitar. I mean, I worked with all those guys in Nashville. Then when I moved to California, I hooked up with Hal Blaine and his group, and you know, that again helped me to continue to have hits because they were the best. They were great musicians.
Yeah, and you hear Dizzy now, and it's so tight and precise and melodic that it seems like, hindsight being 20/20, obviously that's going to be a hit. Did you know when you finish recording it, this thing is going to blow up?
You know, it's funny how that works. When I recorded Sheila, I left the studio in Nashville so disappointed. I just knew we'd screwed it up.
Really?
You know. And Save Your Kisses, the B-side, was actually played as the A-side originally. So I just figured Sheila was a lost cause, and I hated the record. And a DJ in Baltimore turned it over and started playing. Buddy Dean, who used to have a show kind of like Dick Clark's Bandstand in Baltimore, he flipped the record over and started playing Sheila, and it was an immediate hit. So you never know.
Right.
Now, when I left the studio with Dizzy, it was the same kind of deal. We left the studio with the basic track and my vocal on it, and I thought, well, that's nice, but I'm not too sure about it. Then when we put the strings on it, that did it for me.
Yeah.
Jimmy Haskell's arrangement of the strings.
Yeah.
I said, man, that's it. That's going to make it.
And production means so much. I don't know about today, but so much then. I mean, you write a simple little song, probably an acoustic guitar.
That's right.
And then the bells and whistles come in.
It has to all click in the studio. You get the feel and the whole mood of the song and the passion of music. I always let the musicians contribute to my records. You know, I never went in the studio thinking I'm going to do this song this way. Because sure enough, if I have that attitude, it's going to change drastically. Then I'm going to be disappointed because it's not my way.
Right.
So I let the musicians always guide me and help me with my arrangements, and it worked for me.
It certainly did. Well, musical accomplishments aside, you also have the distinction of being a guest star on one of the most eccentric and enduring sitcoms of all time. You played Tadpole Talbot, Eb's boyhood friend on Green Acres.
That's right, yeah.
I think she's all right now. What are you going to play?
I'd like to hear the Four of Spades.
Pleasure, ma'am. I set my weekly poker game staring at my hand. I said to myself, if I get an ace, now wouldn't that be grand? But instead I got the Four of Spades. I got the Four of Spades. I got the Four of Spades. Four of Spades is what I got.
I stole Eb from the farm and took him on the road with me.
Right.
And so they were very upset that I took him away. And of course, he got homesick while we were out on the road and came back. But that was a lot of fun. You know, it's funny, when I was making all my hits during the 60s, there was one point when I thought I really wanted to act, you know, to do acting.
Sure.
So that was one introduction to it there when I did the Green Acres show. But then after that, I did a dinner theater in Lubbock, Texas, and I did Star Spangled Girl. And it was like a 3-week run there. And then I realized how hard acting is.
Oh, really?
When you do
Oh,
theater, man, is a whole different ballgame.
Yeah.
And I thought, if I can get through these 3 weeks without just totally walking out on this thing, I will never walk on stage as an actor again. I can sit at home and write my songs and get on stage and sing them, and that's fun for me. But acting is tough work.
Yeah,
It is
well,
tough work.
you're a musician. Stick with acting's for posers.
Yeah.
But we're so happy you're on the road again, Tommy, putting your hits out. Anything the fans need to know about you going on these days?
You can just follow me on my website, TommyRowe.com. We have a Facebook page on there, and my friend Ron Wells in Washington State runs it for me. And I like to stay in touch with the fans. That's why I came out of retirement. My friend Rick Levy said, Tommy, they want to book you here, they want to book you there. I said, Rick, I'm retired. He kept at me, He says, so finally he got me out. We're doing some shows now.
Excellent.
And I love meeting the fans after all these years.
Oh, well, we love meeting you. Tommy Rowe, keep on doing what you're doing. We appreciate every minute of it.
Thanks, Mike.